What are some stupid mentalities and mindsets that need to end? I'm being persecuted when I am contradicted. My daughter would loudly protest stop yelling at me when I would calmly tell her things she didn't want to hear. She grew out of it. But some people never do. That if I change my mind or opinion about something I'm being fake or phony. Seriously. It baffles me that reassessing your position on something after new information is made available or after additional experience is somehow a negative thing to some. I had a guy tell me that I have a personality disorder, when I changed my opinion about a person. When person in question actually changed their behavior for better. So, yeah. I can fix this person who has hurt me many times. I don't get why people say I see something in them after their partner beats them. Like what, so you see? A rematch? Usually it's not just physical abuse but mental abuse too. Often. They convince the person they are worthless and no one else would want them. The victim can feel that because the abuser doesn't leave them. They are good deep down. The human brain can be very cruel to itself when abused. That anything but perfection is a failure. Progress is often incremental and takes time. I have been struggling with weight loss for years. And this concept is something I am finally coming to terms with. That no matter how much I progress and regress, I have to look at the end goal. Little things may slow me down. But I just have to remember to try again. And not beat myself up mentally because I failed my goal. If you're not 100% with us, you're 100% against us. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. You're entitled to speak your mind. You are not entitled to have people listen, comply, or care. Free to say what you want. Not free from the consequences. Edit. Seems I struck a nerve. Thank you all for exemplifying exactly what was meant by the OP and my response. I face the consequences of my speech. I said what I believed and received many upvotes but also many people mocking and disagreeing. Both of which are consequences. I also was not arrested by the government. Which is actually what the First Amendment protects. My opinion is as good as your evidence. This. Or that everyone's opinions are equally valid. No. The guy who has a PhD and 10 years of experience in the field's opinion is more valid than your 10 minutes Google search. Stop comparing traumas. It's not a ducking competition. Learn to have empathy and take care of each other's mental health. I'd also add not to compare stresses. At work I have been stressed the hell out for many reasons. But other co-workers just shrug off my complaints with the phrases, oh you don't have kids or are not even in a relationship. What do you have to be stressed about? I work part-time on weekends and have a full college schedule during the week. If I ever even hint that I'm tired, one of my co-workers is always there to say something like you're only here 2 days a week. How could you possibly be tired? That just because someone is trying to help doesn't mean you can't tell them to stop. Edit. Thanks for all the awards, kind stranger. You could even argue it's your responsibility to tell them to stop. Someone misinformed but well-meaning isn't going to realize they're not helping if you don't tell them. They'll be likely to repeat the same mistake in the future. Yeah, but there comes the response. Hey, I was just trying to help. And get offended. That if you are a salaried employee and don't finish your work on time, you have to work unpaid overtime until it's complete. But if at another time, you complete all of your work early and there's literally nothing left to be done, you are not allowed to leave and instead have to sit at your desk doing nothing until you get in your 40 hours for the week. Employees should either be paid to have their ass in a seat for 40 hours, no more, no less, or be paid to complete a certain set of work regardless of whether it takes 30 hours or 50 hours. This BS double standard that you're paid to complete a task, not for a certain number of hours when there's extra work, but are paid to be there for a certain number of hours. Not to complete a task then leave when there's less work needs to end. I got into this discussion several times with my old boss. We are either hourly or salaried. We were all salaried. If he was going to demand that my team be in their desks at a certain time, I was going to demand they be out of the building at a certain time. Whenever I asked him if he had an issue with the work we were doing, he said of course not. When asked what the problem was then, he said others might think it looks bad. He was a little itch. Assuming that people are not allowed to change their opinions or values over time. And judging people, famous or not, for comments made decades ago. Yes. Some people have patterns of problematic comments and behavior and should not be ignored. But it also makes sense that, for example, a politician may have learned more about abortion or healthcare or what have you and be able to change their stance. We are not the same people at 25 and 50. Or that if you change your opinion based on new evidence that you are somehow dumb, weak, or your opinion no longer matters. Broadcasting everything in social media. If something doesn't work 100% of the time, it isn't worth doing. People use this as an excuse to never do anything, or to deny others from trying. It's frustrating and holds us back as a species. Edited for explanation and to add quotes. 60% of the time. It works every time. If you don't listen to every song or know everything about a band, you are not a real fan. And how recent you became a fan shouldn't determine whether or not you are a proper fan. I used to babysit a kid who, around 9, discovered Star Wars and was really into it. She hadn't seen all the movies yet. Didn't know species and planets, or fan theories, or the names of all the side characters. It was a blast introducing her to that stuff. I told her the Darth Jar Jar theory and we watched The Phantom Menace to find evidence for it. I gave her a mild copy of Star Wars Trivial Pursuit because my family had long since gotten so good at it that it never took any of us more than 2 turns to complete. And it was a whole new world for her. I don't understand people who judge others for not loving the things they love enough. If you don't post about a tragedy or support something on social media, you are okay with or don't support care about said something. Absolute cancer. I don't like the long copy pastas that say a lot of edge stuff and at the end says if you don't share this, you obviously don't care. I'll be checking to see who my real friends are, and will be removing people accordingly. Good riddance. I read about it on the internet. Therefore it's true. My grandma does this all the time to prove her argument and it always ends up being from some BuzzFeed article. Drives me ducking nuts. This bit also with they said it on TV. My grandparents aren't huge internet users but they watch angry political talk shows like it's their lifeblood. At any given time they'll be watching some yelling guy ranting and raving and if you ask to watch something else they're like but we're being educated. There's nothing wrong with yelling and these guys may have a point in their rants. But it's often just people saying stuff without any evidence or further explanation, just this politician eats baby koalas and my grandparents are like can't argue with that. The concept that both fault and responsibility can only be 100% or 0% and that if someone else has some fault it absolves another of all responsibility. Also, if I may, that we should accept full responsibility for our pitfalls. Sometimes it's not our fault, and we were set up to fail. Bad managers use this tactic quite a lot. They make calculated closed-room decisions, and the employee is invited to accept responsibility for those decisions. If they don't accept responsibility as they've gotten railroaded, they're narcissistic and can't take responsibility for their actions. Another good example are toxic friends that set people up. Narcissists. I will concede that people should own their actions and take responsibility for those. They should critically analyze and figure out their level or degree of responsibility in any given situation. Most times, it is within the spectrum you mention. Sometimes, it's 0% or 100%. But shaming people to take responsibility for everything is a way of avoiding responsibility for their actions. This mentality of older people in industries refusing to train or teach younger people, then complaining when younger people don't know what they're doing. I deal with this constantly at work. I'm a young guy in my industry and I am the exception to the norm. Most fire investigators are older guys. They constantly ask me why there aren't more young fire investigators, and I always tell them the same thing. Because you guys made it so difficult to get into the industry by requiring certifications that require 5 years experience to get, require 2 court testimonies to get, and so on, that no one can get into the industry. And then if someone does manage to break in, you guys treat them like crap, refuse to help them, and refuse to teach them what they need to know. There are a ton of critical industries in the United States that are going to have issues because the barriers to getting into the industry are so high, and those already in it are so elitist that there's going to be no one who knows what they are doing left to continue the work. It's a major problem. Teach young people. Bring them in. Show them the ways. Don't be a ducking big dick. I drove a passenger for Uber who was a real estate appraiser. She's close to retirement, as is everyone else in her office. She said they have a huge problem right now because within 5-10 years, most appraisers in the US will be retiring. There will be a massive shortage because, in order to become an appraiser, you have to train apprentice under someone for 2 years. No current appraiser wants to do it because it's a money loss for them. They pay the trainee a wage, have to take more time per appraisal to explain things, etc. Nobody wants to be trained because that's 2 years of low pay before you can even start making decent money. And usually, once trainees finish their 2 years and can work on their own, they leave and either start their own business or join another office. So basically the person who trained them took a 2-year pay cut just to help someone else's business. Expecting everything instantly. Patience is a virtue. You are not going to die if you have to wait in line. Quitting is only for losers. If you try something and don't like it, why keep doing it? Why not allow yourself to switch to a better major or try a different sport or get a new job? I mean, don't quit everything once it gets hard. But why stay miserable for a quitters never win mentality? Get a job you like. Do an activity you like. Edit. I really don't mean quit the second you struggle. I do mean knowing when to quit, as many of the comments say. I mean knowing when to go on to better things. As an example, in my own life I changed majors when I saw how miserable the future seemed to me and how badly I was struggling. The switch was the best decision I ever made. It took me too long to not see it as quitting anymore. But moving on. And thanks for the silvers, guys. And the bless up. Edit. Wow, my first Reddit gold. I'm honored. People who oppose good things because I struggled through it, and so should you instead of thinking good. Nobody should go through that if possible. Currently struggling with a difficult fussy baby. My mom refuses me any sympathy because apparently as a baby 30+ years ago I made the selfish, conscious choice to be less than easy myself. I mean, I can't change anything, so I'm not going to try it. It's been agreed the whole world stinks, so no one's taking showers anymore. Modest mouse. There is this whole work culture expectation now of always being reachable by email or text for whatever happens. A lot of places expect, and at times demand, that you be pretty much on call even when you're not at the office anymore. I worked at an ad agency where days off sometimes didn't even feel like that, because I would still be getting emails about things and was expected to be checking them. I hated it. There should be some level of balance between work and personal life, and I feel like that is fading because so many places are adapting this type of culture and mentality. Especially startups. Whenever I've had an interview of decent quality, one of the last questions is if there's anything I'd like to ask them about. I've successfully taken that opportunity to mention my thoughts on this exact issue. Employment is a two-way street. If you expect me to come into work as a professional and leave my personal life at the door, then I expect a similar treatment in return. Of course, emergencies happen and there is always an exception. But I work to live, not live to work. If you don't like someone, you must be just jealous. If people hate you, it just means you are doing something right. No, that is not true and gives leeway for all sorts of horrible behavior.